What I read in the month of July. Fangirling. Fangirling always. North of New York. That's Canada. But let's dive in to part 2 and we can see what I thought about the rest of the books. Hi everybody, it's Audrey and welcome back to Chapter and Converse and welcome back to part 2 of the books I read in July. So if you saw the first video, you know I split it into 2, and if you haven't, I will link it for you above, below, all around the bend, so you can check that one out. But we are gonna dive straight into the rest of the books that I read in July. And as I already spoiler alerted in video number 1, I had a really good reading month. So let's just talk about the books. So an unexpected favorite is We Are the Brendans by Tracy Lang. And this was a debut novel. I got this from Celadon. They sent me the ARC. And this came out August 3rd. So you guys can get this now. And I say unexpected in that I had been hearing a little bit of buzz about it. Again, debut novel came to me. And it's about this Irish family living in New York. And I just sort of like, sounds interesting. I loved this book. Loved it. I fell in love with this family. I cried. I dog-eared it so much. Again, there were so many passages I could relate to. There were so many just sort of like unexpected turns with the family dynamic and with these relationships and with the different stories and with the different characters. And I kind of went in without an expectation in a way because I was going in a little bit blind, and it was like the book I didn't know I needed. And I mean, like tears, like full tears, like not even like I did that at the beginning, but like by the time I got to the end, like there were tissues involved. So when this book opens, we meet Sunday, and she is living in LA, and she went out that night, had way too many drinks, got in her car, and gets in a terrible car crash. And over on the East Coast, in the middle of the night, her oldest brother, Denny, wakes up to a phone call from the police in LA, and they're like, hey, your sister was in a horrible car crash. She's in the hospital. You need to come get her. And he was just like, how am I her in case of emergency? I haven't even talked to my sister in 5 years. What? So Denny winds up going out to California to get her, and is basically just like, you need to come home. You need to come back to New York. We can take care of you there. There is nothing holding you to your life in California. So Sunday winds up going home, and she moves back in with her family, all of her brothers in their hometown, and they are, for one reason or another, living with their dad in their house that they grew up in. And they own a pub in town. This is set in Westchester, which is north of New York City. And it is about the complications and what it means for her to come back. And it's a small town, and it's a small, close-knit group of people. And there's a lot of secrets, and there's a lot of baggage, and there's a lot of things that went unresolved in the past. And for a book that is like just shy of 300 pages, this packs in so much emotion and depth, and it like reminded me in some ways, though totally different, of Malibu Rising, because it's so much about the relationships between the siblings and complicated relationships with their parents and that dynamic of family. And I just loved it so much. And I have talked to you guys about, like, I grew up outside of New York City. They reference a lot of real places. Tracy Lang references a lot of real places. So this literally was very close to home for me. And I could see the area, I could feel it. I felt like I was in this town, and this could have been the town that I grew up in. And I just loved everything about it. I just cannot stop talking about this book. I thought it was just brilliant. I absolutely loved it, and I highly, hugely recommend it. So pick it up, it just came out. So good, I can't wait to see what she does next. So in my mission to read the classic before I read like the retelling or the new version or the whatever, I read Frankenstein by Mary Shelley because I want to read / already read the Mary Shelley Club because time, you know? So I read Frankenstein, and I actually listened to the audiobook, and I kind of like thought I knew the story, but I didn't really know the story, and not even about like being spoiled for the story. And I feel like what's most impressive to me about this book is how young Mary Shelley was when she wrote it, the sort of the dark messed upness of it for the time that she wrote it. And I understand why it's like this great classic story, but I just, like, to me it was like 3 stars. Like, I'm glad I read it. There were parts of it where I felt a bit bogged down. I enjoyed the overall theme of it. You know, who's the real monster in this? The man who creates the monster or the monster he creates? It's definitely dark and messed up. And I have the movie that I recorded from Turner, which I haven't watched yet, but I want to watch because I'm kind of curious. And then I did wind up reading the Mary Shelley Club, but I finished it in August, so you guys are gonna have to wait to hear what I think about that. But I'm glad I read it. So this was sort of a classic on my list that I wanted to read. I'm glad I read it. And I feel like I should have more to say about it, but I don't. Like, it's cool. Like, we're good. We're good. Yet another 2021 release that I read this month is The Other Black Girl by Zakiya Dalila Harris. And I really enjoyed this book, but I feel like this is one of the many books that has fallen victim to like mismarketing, because I kept hearing it was a thriller, and then I was hearing people say it wasn't a thriller. And I don't think it's a thriller. I think it is, I would say, kind of like literary suspense with maybe like a twinge of horror to it. I feel like is how I would describe it. And to me, when I think of thriller, I think of maybe like fast-paced thrills. And to me, this wasn't thrillery. Doesn't make it not a good book. But I do think a lot of people, myself included, went in with the wrong expectation of it, which I kind of feel like I need to just do like I did here and go in with 0 expectations, kind of don't read too much about a book, because I think that would have served me better. But once I kind of like pushed all that aside and got into the book, I feel like I appreciated it more. So what's the book about, you ask? So this is about a woman named Nella, and she works at Wagner Publishing in New York, and she is literally the only Black woman who works there. And it is as much a commentary on the whiteness of the publishing industry in general, and racism, both overt and subtle, that she feels in this workplace. And then we have this other woman, Hazel, who starts, who is the other Black girl. And Nella is just jazz. Like, she's like, finally, somebody I can talk to, somebody who's gonna get it, somebody that I can be in it with. So out of the gate, there's like a little bit of weirdness, but then they form a friendship, and then things in general just sort of get weird. And Nella starts getting these notes left on her desk that are like, leave Wagner, leave now, get out, go. And she's not quite sure what's happening, and she's not sure where these notes are coming from. She's not sure who is out to get her. But again, things with Hazel are a little bit wonky. So she's like, is it her? Is she threatened by me? What is going on here? And we get multiple perspectives from multiple women. We get multiple timelines, and it's woven together in a very interesting way where it's one of those books where for like a long time I feel like you don't know what's going on, but you're not supposed to know what's going on, but eventually all the dots connect. So at the risk of being super vague, but I'm being super vague on purpose, it's one of those books where like I felt lost for a while in the book, but you're supposed to feel lost for a while in the book. And I enjoyed it. I think it's definitely one of those books where, as a white woman, this is not my experience when I walk into a workplace. And it's about putting myself in her shoes and looking at things through her perspective, through Zakiya Dalila Harris's perspective as someone who used to work in publishing. And a lot of this is her experience to a degree, obviously not all of it, because again, suspense with a twinge of horror. But I really enjoyed her writing. I enjoyed the storytelling. It's a slow burn of a book. And I think if you go into it with those right expectations and are not expecting high octane thriller, you know, twists and turns every time you turn around kind of a thing, and go into it knowing that it's more literary suspense, I feel like manage those expectations and enjoy the book. I really liked it. I'm very curious to see what she comes up with next. I liked her writing. I liked the style of the book. It's set in New York and in Brooklyn. Like, I enjoyed being in the publishing industry. I enjoyed being in the city, like the sights and the sounds. Like, I felt like it was very well described. And I also feel like anyone who's ever worked in sort of a corporate environment, who has struggled to get recognized for the work that they do, who has fought for a promotion, who has fought for opportunities, can relate to different parts of this book. And again, I just really enjoyed it. I thought it was well done. I watched some really interesting interviews with her as well, where she talks about her experience of what inspired the book and her perspective on the stories she was telling. She's also one of those people who was like my hero in that she walked away from her job so she could dedicate her time to writing a book, and like took such a leap of faith and had such faith in herself. And I wish I could be like that self-confident and strong of a person, but I just love her story that she just went for it. She had this idea, she knew she had to commit to it wholly, and she did, and now she's getting all of this amazing success as well. So I just, from a writer's perspective, I really enjoyed it, and also from a reader's perspective, I thought it was really well done. So the next book I want to talk about is Animal by Lisa Taddeo, and I listened to the audiobook of this through Libro FM. So I was able to listen to this through Libro FM's ALC program, which is Advanced Listener Copies, and this is the first book I was able to do with them through their program, and I'm very excited to be a part of their program. And this is one of those books where I was so intrigued by it, and I was hearing so many people talk about it, and I feel like it's one of those books where lots of people are going to love it, and there were parts of it that I enjoyed, but at the end of the day, it wasn't really a book for me, if that makes sense. And this is a book where I felt so lost and confused for so much of the book, but it was also one of those books where you're supposed to be so lost and confused for the whole book and not quite understand what's happening until we get to the other side of it. So I understand why it was done the way it was done, but I had a hard time caring about our main character because I just didn't really understand everything that was going on. So Emma Roberts does the audio narration of this book, and it is brilliant. I don't know, I need to look to see if she's done other audiobooks, but she was perfect, her voice was perfect. It just, I feel like that was one of the things that kept me into the story, was the fact that her narration was so good. But this is a story about a woman named Joan, and it says, honestly, sometimes I think it's the only recourse, killing men in times like these. So the book opens with a man that Joan knows committing an extremely violent act right in front of her, and she is in New York City, and she just needs to flee immediately. So she winds up going to Los Angeles, and it says she's in search of Alice, the only person alive who can help her make sense of her past. So Joan is on sort of this journey and this search, and she has a bit of a complicated past. We're not quite sure her situation. We're not quite sure how Joan got from point A to point B, and it very slowly unravels. And it's like dark and twisted and messed up, so it totally sounds like a book that I should like, but I just had a hard time, like I said, caring about Joan because I just didn't know what was going on the entire time. And it was hard for me to root for her. Not that you have to root for a character or care for a character. Like, I'm fine with the unlikable narrator type of a situation. You guys know that. But I feel like it prevented me from connecting with the book wholly because I didn't feel like I connected to any of the characters or that I was overly interested in any of the characters. So I was curious to see where it was going to go. I was curious to see what the deal was with Alice, what journey we were going on. But at the end of the day, it wasn't a book that I was like, that was amazing. Oh my God, that was so good. I loved it. I'm glad I read it. I had super curiosity about it. But like I said, at the end of the day, I think this is going to be one of those books that people like totally love it or like, and I feel like I'm more like, But I'm also super grateful that I had a chance to listen to it. So all that to say, just a quick note about Libro FM. If you guys are not familiar with it, it is similar to many of those audiobook subscriptions out there. But the beautiful part about Libro FM is they support independent bookstores. So you can either do your membership through them and just let them choose how they distribute your membership directly to these independent bookstores, or you can choose an independent bookstore of your own liking, and all the money from your membership or any books that you purchase goes directly to that indie bookstore. So I have a code that I will link for you guys down below if you want to check it out. And it's great. I love me an audiobook, and I love me a subscription that supports indie bookstores. You guys know I rave about my love for Murder by the Book and for Brookline Booksmith and for Poison Pen, and there's just obviously so many indie bookstores all around the world, and so this is a great way to be able to support them, not just in times like these, but in all times. So if you guys are interested, I will link that down below. No pressure, just in case you guys are audiobook people and want to check it out. It's down there for you guys to check out. Next up, I want to talk about a book that I'm sure you guys are so tired of hearing me talk about, but you're gonna have to listen to me talk about it here, and then one more time when I do that infamous book haul that I keep talking about. But it's Survive the Night by Riley Sager. And I got this from Murder by the Book, which I'm so excited about. So I did do the personalized autograph by him, and you guys know I am a Riley Sager super fan. And I am bummed to hear how many people did not like this book. I'm hearing the reviews out there, and you know, different strokes, it's totally fine. I am not here to like sell any books to any people or try and change anybody's mind about a book. But I have to say, I really did enjoy this book. And again, super fan. But at the same time, if I don't like a book by an author that I love, I'm not going to force myself to like it or pretend that I like it. And in the full disclosure category, because obviously I'm here to tell you guys the truth, when I first started this book, I called friends and I was like, ooh, I don't know, I'm a little nervous about this. This feels a little familiar to me, and not familiar in a way of like he's done it before, but like I've read this story before, like I've seen this story before. I feel like we're going down a very familiar path. And then something happened, and not even that something happened in the book per se, but more of like it clicked for me, and then I was like, oh, I get what's going on here. And not in the sense that I like got the reveal of the book, but more of like, okay, all right, why did I underestimate Riley Sager? He's not gonna let me down. He is not going to give me just some cliche on a tray. And I got totally sucked in and devoured the rest of the book obsessively, like the crazy person that I am. And I loved it. I really did. I really did. And I had a really good time with this. I really liked what he did with it. I hesitate to say anything because I don't want to spoil anything for anybody, because that's the worst when people spoil books for you. But the short version, and again, I know I've talked about this 100 times, you guys already know this and you're like, come on lady, but this is about a girl named Charlie, and it's 1991, November. She is at college and she needs to get out of Dodge because her best friend and her roommate was killed by the person known as the campus serial killer, and she just needs to get out of there. So she goes to the ride board. I was gonna say the job board, that was a thing too. She goes to the campus ride board. She meets this other student, Josh, who's also going to Ohio. They decide to like go together. He's like, I got a car, I'm gassed up, let's go. They leave that night. And this book takes place over the course of that night. And not too far into the trip, Charlie's starting to think that maybe she took a ride with the man who killed her roommate. So what is she gonna do? So there were so many things that I just loved about this, and maybe it's because the 90s is a very familiar time to me. This is a book written by a man who was a film studies student in college, writing about a girl who was a film studies student in college. He is a writer who has a huge love of film. He hosts movie nights. It is a character who sees the world through movies in her mind. When she is stressed, when she is struggling, when she is panicked, when she starts to get herself in a situation that she can't handle, she flips a switch and she's like, nope, Charlie, we're turning this into a movie. Everything's fine, everything's fine. And to a degree, it's like she hallucinates these movies, but she can't always distinguish between the hallucination and a reality. And I loved how he integrated that. I loved all his winks and nods to different movies. And sometimes it is an actual mention, sometimes it's a super subtle nod. He even takes like a little dig at himself in this, where if you like read Home Before Dark, or again, you're a crazy person like me and listen to all his podcast interviews, you will probably get a little bit of a laugh out of it. But there's so much great pop culture reference, there's music, Nirvana, diners and jukeboxes, and just great 90s culture. Like it's so much that I love. And again, I feel like it's a time period that I very much connect to as well. And I just thought it was great. And I love his writing. It's like a compulsive read. And I think what I really enjoyed about Charlie, and at the risk of making like a huge generalization, but as a writer myself, but since the time I was a kid, and I was always described by teachers as imaginative, someone with a great imagination. And oftentimes I think it was because I was, you know, talking to my dolls, or I was talking to people that I pretended was there. But till this day, I mean, I have conversations in my head and I play out things in my head, and I could be going for a walk and listening to a certain song, and I'll think, if I was in a movie and I was walking down the street and this is the song that was playing and this is how it would be shot, or if I'm thinking about when I'm writing characters in my book, and if my book gets turned into a movie and this is the song that I would have overlay this scene. And I feel like I see so many things visually that when Charlie was doing it, I could connect to that. So like, I don't hallucinate. I do not have Charlie's history. I have, to my knowledge, never been in the car with a serial killer, but you never know. Maybe he just decided, or she decided I was not their person. But there were parts of her that I really connected to. And again, I think for people who didn't enjoy the book, but I would not skip it based on everybody's review of it. I just thought it was great. I loved what he did. I just was like, dang. And it's one of those books that I want to go back and read from the beginning, for sure. It has not unseated Final Girl as my favorite of his. I'm continuing my read all my Riley Sagers, so I will keep you guys posted to see if second time around anything undoes Final Girls, but I don't think anything will. But I had a great time with this book, I really did. So rave review from me. Fangirling always. So that's gonna do it for the rest of what I read in July. Let me know if you guys have read any of these. Let me know faves, disappointments, anything in between, or anything else that you guys want to talk about down below. And I will see you guys in another video really soon. So thanks for hanging out today. Thanks for coming back. And like I said, I'll see you guys soon. Bye.